What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Halftime Snacks podcast. This show features short interviews that you can listen during the halftime of your favorite sports events. Every Tuesday, I host fun conversations with talented people in the sports industry where we'll learn from their stories, knowledge, and experiences. So go grab your favorite snack and come snack with us. Are you ready? Let's go! All right, everyone, joining us today is a former guest of the Halftime Snacks. He was here on 2019, and I'm so excited to be able to host him again. Author of the 3-Win Sponsorship, social entrepreneur, sports marketing professional. He founded and owns Third Win Group, which now became a talent agency in the whole space of talents, not only in sports, music, and entertainment, which want to create a positive impact in the world and in society. Ladies and gentlemen, John Balkam. John, what's up, man? Welcome back to the Halftime Snacks.
Ronan, it's always great to be with you, man. It's an honor to be a recurring guest here on Halftime Snacks. Good to see you, man.
I'm super excited, and of course, I want to jump into everything that has happened since we last spoke. But what about you? You just first go ahead and tell us what has changed, really. What has changed from the last time we spoke? I remember you were talking a lot about your book, and you were coming up with Third Win Group. So what has changed? Share with us what was going on.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ronan. And a lot has changed. Of course, in the last 2 years, so much has changed in society. But the same goes for on the individual level and with our business. So when we first spoke, Ronan, the book 3-Win Sponsorship that we published, that I published in December 2019, was just coming out. And back then, my impression was I was going to take the book and kind of move in the direction of thought leadership and kind of selling my ideas, right? That was my thought around Third Win Group. Let's take the thesis of the book and let's turn it into kind of a consulting firm for the sports entertainment industry. That all changed over the summer of 2020. And where we're at now is that we're actually more of a talent agency now. And the reason we went that direction is because I met an amazing professional athlete named Jeremy Casebeer, who is a professional beach volleyball player, but who's also an environmental advocate and someone who's very passionate about sustainability. And he really bought into the concepts behind 3-Win Sponsorship and integrating causes and personal values into his sponsorships. And we just decided to work together. And from there, we tried to help Jeremy on his journey to align his mission with his brand partnerships, with his partnerships with nonprofits, so that he has a really compelling story as a beach volleyball player, but also as an individual that's all around sustainability and climate solutions and environmentalism. And so that was kind of the jumping off point, is once we started working with Jeremy, we said, why don't we really just focus on talent? Why don't we apply these ideas that we had to a business around representing the most impactful athletes, artists, creators that we can meet and we can have access to. So where we're at today, Ronan, is that we're calling Third Win Group a purpose-driven agency, really. And so what we're saying now is Third Win Group, we also go by TWG, it's an independent agency serving athletes, artists, and creators who are on a mission to serve others and protect the planet. And we are on a mission, really. We want to build one of the most impactful businesses in the sports and entertainment industry and be the go-to agency for the modern day activist, athlete, artist, creator. So that's where we're at now.
That's awesome. I don't know if you, John, for sure read it, but if you guys haven't, I wrote an article on my newsletter just last week about purpose-driven marketing and touched a lot about how 2020 and 2021 were big years on purpose-driven marketing. We've seen the trend growing and growing each year more and more. 2022 for sure is going to be another big year for purpose-driven activations. But I wonder if there's maybe a couple of examples or activations, Sean, that you can think about from 2021, either from your clients or from outside in the sports world or even in the entertainment industry or music, that resonate the most with you that you want to share with us maybe today.
Sure. So why don't I give you one example from in-house from TWG and one example from outside of our organization that I really like. And more generally, Ronan, we're seeing lots and lots of brands and lots of athletes or artists in general going in this direction. Even if you just turn on your TV on any given Saturday or Sunday and you're watching sports, you'll notice the purpose of these advertisements and the overall message of these advertisements in general are shifting more towards purpose-driven and cause-related. But within TWG, we had a number of great partnerships that demonstrate this win-win-win mindset, right? Like, let's use this marketing message as a means to kind of inspire people to do good, inspire people to be a part of something bigger than themselves. With Jeremy Casebeer, I mentioned him as one of our primary clients at TWG. He is really passionate about the environment. How can we take action to promote climate solutions, right? That's really what he's all about in his personal mission. Fortunately, we were able to connect him up with a beachwear company called Fair Harbor, and Fair Harbor has a very similar mission. And what they've done is they've created really attractive, kind of classic beachwear pieces, whether it be trunks, whether it be shirts, whether it be any number of different products. And they make them primarily from recycled ocean plastic waste. So I don't need to go into too much detail on that. There's a lot of ocean plastic that is polluting our oceans and making all kinds of different overall issues with our environment and our climate. This company decided, let's be a part of the solution here. Let's remove the ocean plastic waste and let's turn it into something useful and something beautiful. So with Jeremy, we were able to team him up with Fair Harbor and make him their first athlete endorser in Fair Harbor history. And really we're able to craft the narrative around, look, let's be a part of the solution here. Let's protect our oceans. Let's save our beaches. And look, just by simply partnering with Fair Harbor and buying their products, we can in some small way be a part of the solution. So that to me was a great example of there's a clear line between Jeremy's story, Fair Harbor's story, and kind of how we want to engage both of their audiences. And it's towards, let's do something about this ocean plastic problem. On the other hand, look, there's been a lot, and one that comes to mind was more so from 2020 as opposed to 2021. And the main thing was Patrick Mahomes and Adidas really looking to make a bold statement around the Black Lives Matter movement, right? As you recall, Ron, in 2022 in the U.S. here was an extremely tumultuous time on the back of the George Floyd murder at the hands of police. And over the summer, a lot of people kind of started to try and reckon with the racial injustice and racist history of the country. And in the past, a lot of athletes and brands as big as Adidas might not have touched this, right? Michael Jordan famously said, Republicans buy sneakers too, right? However, Adidas, in a really big hero style advertisement that was on national TV, they teamed up with Patrick Mahomes, one of the biggest stars in the NFL, someone who's extremely recognizable face, and they made a bold statement around we need to do better. We need to address the racial inequities in this country, and Adidas is behind someone like Patrick Mahomes as he tries to promote racial equality in this country. So there's another example of where things are headed. And, there's countless others we could go into, but I thought that'd be a good place to start off.
But what about like small brands or smaller brands that don't have the budget of, say, Nike or Adidas, right? How can they start thinking about purpose driven marketing and getting aligned with different causes that they wanna, like, they wanna authentically and genuinely support? How can they, what would be the first 3, 4, 5 steps that you would suggest in your mind, John, for smaller brands that don't have the budget, how they should go about thinking about getting involved with purposes and causes, and supporting causes that would align with their messaging and their brands?
Yeah, Ronan, I think the first thing I would tell a smaller brand and executives at smaller brands is forget the mindset of trying to change the world. What I would replace that with a mindset of, let's serve our community. And here's why that's, to me, a great mindset is, if you're a smaller company, you're likely only serving a few markets, maybe even just the city where you, or the town where you are operating, right? And so you don't need to try and go take on the problems of the world, right? If you want to get involved in causes that are meaningful to your employees and customers, the number one thing you can start doing is start figuring out, like, what are the problems that are really facing my community, like where we live and work, where we operate, where we have suppliers. Think about all of the stakeholders in your business and just ask them, or try and do some research, or any number of different things. And that's good enough, right? I think we have high expectations for multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies for good reason, right? With great power comes great responsibility, right? However, that doesn't mean that smaller brands can't get involved in cause marketing, purpose-driven marketing, and figuring out what their higher purpose is above and beyond selling their products or services. So as a brand, think about just one mindset, I think, can help you in the right direction of what is our purpose? What cause or causes can we get tied into? How might we serve our community best? How might we serve all the different stakeholders in our business the best? What problems are they facing? So these questions, I think, can spark up a conversation within your business. And it might be as simple as just, going out into the community, talking with people, talking with community leaders, talking with government officials. And you'd be surprised at how many different things you can authentically contribute towards to change your community. And to me, that's good enough. We don't need small businesses trying to take on the weight of the world. Maybe just try and serve your neighborhood, or literally the block where your business operates. And then we can think about, taking on, the biggest issues of our world society.
Yeah, and one keyword that you mentioned there, John, that I loved it, of course, because I talked about it as well, and that is authenticity. Being authentic and being really aligned to what you're supporting. So no matter how small the cause is, make sure, like I would suggest you make sure that you are really aligned to that. You're doing it because it is authentic. You're doing it because it is aligned to who you are, your background, what you believe in, who you want to be, who you work with. I feel like also that is really important. As you mentioned very, very interesting key points, John. Like, for instance, going to your suppliers and figuring out what are they involved in, who are they. Maybe they're this small rural community out from I don't know you based at, but it could be even from Mexico, or may use some help, or may use some support. So starting with them is really a great idea. It's like you don't really need to think about, oh wow, like people in Africa, or starvation, or people having you don't need to go so far. That's my point. My point is that you just need to see who you work with, who are your stakeholders, and then ask. It's just a matter of asking, right? Getting in touch, asking, hey, what are some of your problems? How can we help? How can we provide resources? or maybe if I don't have the resources, maybe I can connect you with someone who has resources. Is that a good starting point, John? Do you think that we're going along the same lines on what we're thinking?
Yes, absolutely. And again, there's a lot of literature, a lot of ink has been spilled about the concept of stakeholder capitalism, right? Where in the past we've been worshiping shareholders, and you know, there was literally for 50 years in this country and in the broader world, there was this idea that the only responsibility of business is to return value to shareholders. And I don't think after 50 years and like all of the different problems that we still have around society that anybody would say that that is the only responsibility of business. What I like to say is that that is a responsibility of business is to return value to shareholders. There are multiple other responsibilities of business. And one of those to me is, treating all of your stakeholders with respect and lifting them up as much as you can to increase the quality of life for everybody. So that means your employees. That means, your suppliers. That does mean your shareholders. But that also means the communities where your business operates. Who's struggling in your community? What problems are they struggling with? How can you help? In many ways, you could ask yourself, how could your product or service help with one of the specific problems in your community? That to me is the best way to make it authentic. Like you said, Ronan, is does your product or service have the ability to alleviate suffering in your community? And if so, how do you make that happen? Because that to me is really embracing this idea that your responsibility as a business is not simply to return value to shareholders. It is also to return value to your stakeholders, to your community. And that to me is a much more fulfilling way to go about doing business. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, 100%, John. One of the things that I've been thinking about now that hearing you speak again, which has been great, John, is how exactly can different trends that are going on around the world help push purpose-driven marketing. And one of the trends that I came up with real quickly is, for instance, how now name, image, likeness, the new legislation in the U.S. where college athletes can monetize their name and their image and their brands. I feel like that specific trend, which is just very specific, could potentially put college athletes in the mindset of, okay, now I can monetize my name. Now I can purposefully go out there and find different brands or companies that would be aligned to my personality or what I want to support or what I'm aligned to, as you mentioned. I wonder if there's other different trends that I don't have in mind or listeners don't have in mind, such as NIL, that you want to share with us on why they will help push and support different sponsorship opportunities, not only for athletes. I mean athletes because it's mostly what you mentioned you're working with, but also for smaller brands as well, as we were talking about. What are some of the different trends that you have in mind or you visualize or that you're excited about because they are going to push out the thing that you've been working passionately for the last 2 years?
Yeah, Ronan, let's think about like 3 really interesting trends that are developing in parallel right now. So you mentioned name, image, and likeness. I think of that as just like a brand new market, right? That's a brand new market that companies have, up until the summer of 2021 have not been able to tap into. And in many ways, college athletes are by definition smaller brands than professional athletes, right? There have been it's been basically the wild west, but name, image, and likeness is one trend. But alongside that, we have the trend around athlete activism, right? Which has been growing in the 5-6 years since Colin Kaepernick made his really bold stand against racial injustice and inequity and police brutality in the U.S. we've seen many, many more athletes kind of follow his lead. And I think the third trend to look at in concert with that is the rise in athlete empowerment by means of social media, right? And in many ways, that third one of athlete empowerment and athletes, like recognizing their voice and their power in society, with the tools that they have at their disposal through social media, that almost feeds into the growth of the other two as well. So here's what I mean by that. Because everybody, everybody with a phone now has access to social media tools, can build their own audience, can create their own personal brand, can control their own stories and narrative that they're sharing with the world and with their fan bases. That has led to an increase also in athlete activism, right? Because now if I'm a professional athlete or a collegiate athlete, I can go and talk directly to my fans, and I don't have to go through the media. I don't have to go through a third party. I can speak my mind. If there's something that I feel authentically drawn to, a cause that I feel that I can contribute to the conversation and to solving problems for others, like I can do that. And by the way, that no longer means I'll have to risk, potential upside from a sponsorship perspective. In fact, we're seeing more brands are wanting to pay more and get involved more with outspoken athletes. So in the past, when Michael Jordan was coming up, he might have been risking dollars to make a public stand on a certain divisive political cause. Now, athletes are actually likely to get paid more for being more outspoken and more progressive and kind of pushing things forward. Now, not everybody will agree with you, and you're most likely to have like divisiveness in your comments, on Twitter. However, if you look at an athlete like Megan Rapinoe, who has been a really, really great player for many years for the U.S. women's national team, in the professional women's soccer league here in the U.S., she's been a great player for many years. But when did her profile really take off? Well, number one, the most recent World Cup when the women's team won another World Cup, and the Olympics as well when they won another gold. But also when she started speaking out against pay inequity between the men's and women's team, and she kind of led the charge there. What has happened in the months and years since then? Her sponsorship revenue has gone up significantly, right? And this is just a moment in society where mindsets are changing around what are the role of athletes in the kind of conversation around certain issues, right? It's no longer shut up and dribble. It's actually, no, we want to hear from you. Like, you're a leader. We actually want you to make a stand. And in many ways, you're seeing that brands themselves are probably not best positioned to make these big stands. But if you can put a human face against one of these causes, that is more effective, right? If you almost, as a brand, your role is more to be the cheerleader for a Megan Rapinoe, and support her, that is more effective than you as the brand saying, we fight for, women's equal pay, right? I just don't think brands are the right people, quote unquote. If corporations are people, which, that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But I think brands' role is more in the role of like the supporter, the cheerleader for the athletes who are the true leaders around issues that are plaguing society. So that's where things are getting interesting, right? Is like, it's much better to hear from an individual athlete, right, on causes, because they're a human being, with feelings and with their own experiences. And many athletes in our country have experienced racism, right, or have experienced sexism, or have experienced the gender pay gap. So they can authentically speak to these causes. And there's a reason why we should listen to them. Whereas brands, should we really listen to what they have to say around the Black Lives Matter movement, around gender pay, around, environmentalism? Like, I don't know. It's a brand, Brands, to me, are starting to realize that athletes artists, creators are a great kind of messenger for the values and the causes that they want to stand for. So,
Right, to give them the platform, like
correct.
we're gonna push the message, but the messenger is really more the athlete. John, and lastly, I want to talk about different causes, and one of the main causes that pops to mind is mental health. We've seen it recently with Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles specifically this last year. I don't know if you guys watched, but I do recommend the Netflix documentary called Breaking Point from tennis player Marty Fish, which he really relates his story on how he suffered from mental health. It's one of the causes that comes to mind quickly because we're starting to see it more and more, how athletes come up and express how challenging it's been. We've seen athletes like Michael Phelps support different types of I think it's, I'm not sure if it's Calm or one of the apps that help out with meditation. How big it has been, how big it has changed, John. What is your thoughts? What are your thoughts around that cause specifically? And is there one or two causes that you are eyeing as one of the like biggest risers on really next to mental health? One other that comes to mind that you also want to share?
Yeah, well, this is a really important, topic for me and for TWG as well and our clients. And in addition to that documentary you mentioned, Ronan, I'd encourage people to check out Weight of Gold, which is really relevant because we're about to have another Olympics, and it's all about Olympic athletes and their struggles with mental health. I'll just say this: I think this could be the most powerful cause that athletes can be a part of, over the coming years, because mental health affects everybody, right? Like literally everybody has mental health, and for the longest time, it's been stigmatized. Oh, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about depression, anxiety. We don't talk about bipolar disorder. I've actually personally had issues with mental health in actually having to go to the hospital and having to deal with like severe mental health issues. So to me, this has been one of the most rewarding and powerful things to watch in the sports entertainment industry, is how many brave individuals have been speaking up and contributing towards breaking the stigma around mental health. Interestingly enough, like it seems that athletes, artists, creators are the most relevant folks to talk about mental health because of the additional pressures that come with being a public figure and the additional pressures that come with having to perform at a high level and to sacrifice so much to get to the top of the mountain in whatever your field is, whatever your sport or your trade is. So mental health to me, and mental health and well-being, number one, it's important, like, because everybody has it. It affects everyone. Number two, it's important because athletes and artists can speak authentically to their own challenges, and I just think it's been really powerful. I think that brands that like really want to make mental health and well-being one of the pillars or one of the causes or values that they kind of support, like go work with athletes, go work with artists, musicians, and let's break the stigma together, right? You mentioned Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles. Like that was national, if not global news when those two young women basically stepped aside and said, I'm not well enough to compete. I'm not well enough to, I'm going to let my team down, or I'm just going to, have a major health issues if I go forward. And that was powerful. That got people talking. It may have made some people uncomfortable, but honestly, it's a good thing, right? It's a good thing that it made people uncomfortable, because for too long we haven't talked about mental health as a part of our overall health. So, kudos to them, and continue to watch how society changes due to the courage and the bravery of folks like Naomi and Simone, who stepped up and who shared their experiences and who just, their actions backed up their words too in this case. In terms of what's coming, the other trends and what other causes that athletes and artists will be a part of, to me, it's going to come back to environmentalism and climate action. And we're already starting to see that because, again, it's a big enough issue that it affects everybody, right? Nike, interestingly enough, on the brand side, they've had some messaging around, if there's no planet, then there's no sport, right? And you're starting to see more athletes. If you check out an organization called Players for the Planet, which was founded by a former MLB player named Chris Dickerson, he's actually gathering a collective of athletes from across many different sports to basically contribute towards climate action. And they've gotten brands involved with that. A brand that I think is very specifically taking on the climate space is High-Low Athletics from the UK, which everybody should check out. And they're really promoting, a group of athletes from the UK and abroad who are what they call athletes for planet. So this is going to be a topic of conversation for many, many years. And I do think that, right next to mental health, environmentalism, climate action is going to be that cause that we're going to be hearing from athletes a lot on. Other than that, we could go down any number of different cause areas, but to me, those are two that are going to be very prevalent for many, many years to come.
Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy learning about the business and technology behind sports, make sure you subscribe to the Sports Tech Biz newsletter. I'll leave the link in the show notes. See you all next week. Bye-bye.